have got our players ready to show you for our first matchup, which I believe is still Maurice Uteg versus Yosuke Takayanagi. So of course we have Maurice here, who has got a plethora of top finishes, including a Worlds Day 2 from the year just gone. And then of course they had that championship place in Bremen in 2022. And their team as well, being a very, very balanced team, shows why they have those placements, because they can play a little bit of everything.
Yeah, his team consisting of the Ogerpon with the Wellspring Mask, the Goldengo, Amoonguss, Iron Hands, Roaring Moon, and Landorus, looking very, very nice here. I believe Goldengo has become like a little bit of a signature Pokemon of his. I see him play it a lot, although he has just informed me that he did manage to win a mid-season showdown without it. So yeah, good to know that there's also other Pokemon that he pilots very, very well, but still very nice to see him bring the Goldengo here once again.
Yeah, it's nice to see Goldengo. It's one of those Pokemon that's really started to pick up, because where Fluttermane is still everywhere, as it always is, it's got a good typing in that Steel typing, so you can Terra into a Steel type and then still take good hits for it. But of course, with Maurice's one, which we're seeing here as well, a lot of them take up that Terra Dragon, just to help a bit with that new threat down the line, which is that Urshifu Rapid Strike. So it's one of those Pokemon that is kind of a bit of a toolbox. You can stay in a normal Terra form, and you can take a bit of a better hit from a Fluttermane if it chooses to lock into like a Choice Specs Moonblast. Or if you see an Urshifu, you can take hits from that and then risk your Fluttermane matchup a bit more. But of course, the rest of the team really, really help with that. And there's just other common contenders here like that Landorus, that Iron Hands, to just have a bit of defensive core. And Amoonguss as well, which has started picking up after the decline of other Ogerpon forms and Pokemon like Rillaboom, where Amoonguss was kind of left untouched, so no one countered it. And then everyone all of a sudden started bringing it again, and it's just a really, really good Pokemon to have right now.
Yeah, and this Amoonguss is actually playing the Mental Herb as opposed to the more common either Citrus Berry or Rocky Helmet, meaning that, you know, if it faces up against something like a Tornadus, it won't be able to be taunted right away, so, you know, can get off a Spore pretty freely as long as it doesn't take something like a Fake Out from an opposing Iron Hands. But yeah, in combination with that Tornadus is of course that Urshifu Rapid Strike that we see a lot, and I'm looking at Maurice's team here and I'm thinking if I'd be playing an Urshifu Rapid Strike, I probably won't feel comfortable bringing it in this matchup.
Yeah, it does seem one of those matchups where you are forcing the ones such as that Urshifu to not do as much damage as possible. But of course, let's see if there is an Urshifu coming up with the opponent in Yosuke coming up next. And it does not look like there is, because it is something that's completely opposite, if I was to say, to that Urshifu, which is the slower bear in the Ursaluna, and that overall Sunroom core that a lot of players started to pick up to counter these powerful, powerful water types.
Yeah, and looking at Yosuke Takayanagi's achievements here, of course, 2023 World's Top 16, 2022 Japan National Top 16, 2021 Victory Road Circuit Winter Series Top 16, and of course 2021 Victory Road Circus Winter Series champion in Earth 3. But yeah, so Trick Room team here for Yosuke is with the Ursaluna that you just mentioned, not the Blood Moon version that we've seen not that much of, but you know, the well-known Physical Guts Flame Orb set. But this one is also playing Swords Dance, meaning that, you know, it's already going to be doing a lot of damage with the Guts and Burned boost, but Swords Dance is just going to boost that damage even more, so, you know, Maurice is going to have to find a way to deal with that. Possibly trying to put that Ursaluna to sleep, but, you know, once the Trick Room is up, there's not a lot he can do to stop it.
There's not much he can do whatsoever. And as you said with our Swords Dance, is one of the things in that Ursaluna, where if you lead something like Cresselia plus Ursaluna, you're then left in a bit of a paradigm, because it's if you knock out the Cresselia, the Ursaluna gets a Swords Dance off. But if you know Ursaluna's going for Swords Dance, you knock out the Ursaluna, or it protects, and Cresselia gets a Trick Room off. So it's one of those things that you can force that instant pressure on that turn one, which is what makes Trick Room teams like this very, very powerful. And then either way, you have like a Fluttermane that can come for that fast way the Trick Room doesn't go up. And if it does and Ursaluna goes down, then Torkoal and Amoonguss coming straight in. And as we were mentioning off that screen there, which we noticed just as we were coming in, Amoonguss is an offensive Amoonguss this time around with 2 attacking moves and a Focus Sash, as opposed to the Pollen Puff Rage Powder variants we see quite often in this format.
Yeah, no Pollen Puff and no Rage Powder is very, very interesting, because when I think Amoonguss, then I think like, oh, okay, I need to have Spore, which this Amoonguss still has, but I also feel like, oh, I definitely need Rage Powder. That's like Amoonguss's whole role, being like that redirection support with also the threat of putting things to sleep. But here, yeah, we have Leaf Storm and Sludge Bomb, which are two moves that we see on Amoonguss sometimes, but usually not both of them. Usually it's one of them. And also the Focus Sash here, opposed to like a Citrus Berry or Rocky Helmet or even Mental Herb, as we saw on Maurice's team, means that, yeah, this might be like a super offensive Amoonguss that just definitely wants to be able to survive maybe something like a Bleak Wind Storm, or I don't know, maybe even a Heat Wave from Heatran, and then either put something to sleep or maybe just get a KO on an Urshifu or something like that.
We'll have to see if those KOs come through. Of course, Amoonguss seems tailor-built to Ogerpon, which is on the opposing side if Maurice does choose to bring it. As you see, coming on out is the Ursaluna plus Cresselia we just mentioned, the Golden Go plus Iron Hands. So right away, it looks like there's pressure coming up from both players, because they all have that game of one of them can set up and one of them can be disruptive. It just turns out who you want to go for, and either way, you are letting something get activated within the first turn of this battle.
Yeah, this is a very interesting lead, seeing the Ursaluna Cresselia just in the lead right away. Of course, now this Ursaluna could threaten both the Goldengo and the Iron Hands with something like an Earthquake, but it does not have its Guts boost yet, which means that it won't be doing as much damage as with the Guts boost. But the Cresselia could, of course, set up a Trick Room here, but then there is the threat of the Iron Hands and that Fake Out. But Cresselia actually going to go for a Helping Hand, which I believe does move before Fake Out, and Iron Hands is going to go for a Fake Out into that Cresselia slot, which is not going to care about that thanks to the Helping Hand, and Goldengo is going to try and set up a nasty plot here, going to boost that special attack as the Earthquake does come out. It's going to hit both of Maurice's Pokemon super effectively. How much damage is going to do? It's going to take out the Goldengo thanks to that Helping Hand boost, and the Iron Hands just barely holding on, but it didn't really do anything this turn. It went for Fake Out in the Cresselia, but since Helping Hand has a higher priority as Fake Out does, that was awesome turn for Yosuke.
That was an amazing turn for Yosuke. That's one of those turns where, you know, normally Maurice is probably thinking, okay, I Fake Out the Cresselia, that guarantees there's no Trick Room, and normally you see an Ursaluna going for a Protect, and just to get that ability proccing with the Flame Orb plus the Guts activating on the same turn. But Yosuke reading into that perfectly and just using their knowledge of priority brackets to get that Helping Hand off and just slapping out a powerful Earthquake, showing that this bear doesn't need to be burnt and all warm and snug to get the bigger damage. It just needs to be given that Helping Hand. As Roaring Moon comes in, which unlike its counterpart, it is not a flying type, so that's still going to take big damage from an Earthquake if it gets hit by it, especially at the stage we're in now. The Breaking Swipe could be a saving grace to maybe chip that damage down a little bit. Not that Ursaluna really worries about that, given how powerful it is naturally with its base stats.
Yeah, the Breaking Swipe could help out a little bit, especially since this Ursaluna now does have the Guts boost. But then again, there's nothing really stopping this Cresselia from, you know, maybe setting up a Trick Room here, especially since, you know, it does have access to that Terra Fire if it decides it does not want to take the risk and being hit by a super effective knockout from this Roaring Moon. So yeah, this Crest sitting pretty nicely here, as we are going to see a terrestrialization here on what is going to be that Cresselia, as predicted, is going to terrestrialize into that Fire type, meaning that if a knockoff comes out here from this Roaring Moon, it is not going to be able to hit it super effectively, and the Ursaluna is going to go for a Protect here, does not want to take any damage outside of Trick Room, as knockoff actually goes into the protecting Ursaluna as opposed to the Cresselia, and this Iron Hands is also going to target into that Ursaluna slot. So this Cresselia probably freely going to set up a Trick Room here, and now this Ursaluna is ready to start sweeping.
Ready to start going for that sweep, and that was actually a really well orchestrated play by Maurice going forward further in the battle, because if you knock off the Ursaluna and go over its Flame Orb, if Cresselia go to the Lunar Blessing, which also heals the burn as well as the HP, you know that you're not getting that Guts boost being put onto it, so it's not doing as much damage. And then you can have Breaking Swipe, which chip it down and down and down until it can't do anything. But Yosuke just going for the bread and butter, protect plus trick room, going for Trastalization just to cover anything like that knockoff going into the Cresselia, and it looks like it's just thwarted Maurice in the space of a turn, because the battle has been cancelled for that forfeit, and Yosuke going within 2 turns with a trick room hyper offense team to give himself the lead in this matchup.
Yeah, that's the power of Trick Room if you have a great matchup like this and you get that first turn, called so perfectly, just that helping hand Earthquake just taking out the Goldango. Like, I wasn't even sure if, how much damage it's going to do. I mean, Ursaluna has a lot of attack, but, you're always used to the damage it deals with the Flame Orb, so when the Flame Orb isn't there yet, or the burn status isn't there yet, then I kind of question myself, like, oh, how much damage is this going to do? But yeah, that helping hand instead, just crazy turn 1, and then turn 2 that protect. You made a good point that, if the knockoff goes into the Ursaluna and then the Cresselia goes for Luna Blessing, then that, Ursaluna's not going to get a Guts boost anymore from the Flame Orb. So yeah, that is a interesting point there from you. But now going into game 2, honestly, I'm looking at Maurice's team and I'm not sure how he would adapt to this. Maybe try get some Intimidates off with his Landorus, maybe the Iron Hands can't fall for that same trick twice in a row in game 2, but the Ursaluna, of course, is also playing Terra Ghost, so you can't safely fake out into that slot either. And he doesn't even know what other Pokemon Yosuke brought in the back, since all we got to see on his side was that Cresselia and Ursaluna.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where Hyper Offense Trick Room is just showing what it does best, where it's just either preserves so much information for how much damage it does that you don't need to read into it, or again, as we saw with Hyper Offense yesterday, where it's if you knock out the Pokemon, something always comes in the back to do something. So either way, you're either maintaining your information or just completely removing it, and winning in 2 turns, like that's every information game won on the spot. And it also just seems, as you said about that, having that Terra go to the stop the fake outs, everything has a tool on Yosuke's team. Like if you need like the Roaring Moon to maybe try and instantly whittle down the breaking swipes, you know that you can just instantly put pressure on that Trick Room going off because you're not using knockoff or a super effective attack into that Cresselia. Let's see if that is what the pattern is in this game too, that it is a bit of a change up with a slightly faster mode coming out in that Iron Hand plus the Flutter Mane, and then Amoonguss coming alongside Roaring Moon, which is a great adaptation by Maurice because you can see the Amoonguss being that slower Pokemon and could potentially put something to sleep should it be slower or go something like a Trick Room like that Cresselia would have done on that first turn.
Yeah, I think I really like the idea on Yosuke's side to switch up the leads a little bit, since, Maurice probably has to find a way to cover for that possible Cresselia or Saluna lead again. But now the Amoonguss here, yeah, looking seems to be in a pretty nice position to maybe put something to sleep. Of course, there is the threat of the Iron Hands to go for something like a fake out, and the Roaring Moon here, is obviously also threatened by the opposing Flutter Mane, which is a choice spec set. So Maurice might want to consider going for maybe a Terra Poison here, so that way he could resist both the Drain Punch and the Dazzling Gleams from his opponents, but is going to go for a Protect instead, as does Amoonguss, which honestly I really, really like here, since, you burn the Fake Out and also you get to see what move the opposing Flutter Mane locks itself into.
Yeah, it's going to come down to what is the lock of choice. It's that Shadow Ball, which is something that's a fairly safe choice there by Yosuke, because if you lock into that Moonblast, yes, you're likely knocking out the Roaring Moon if it doesn't Terastallize, but then if you face into that Amoonguss later in the day with the Rage Powders, it's then doing less and less damage each time unless it self-Terastallizes. But as well as the Roaring Moon does go for that Terastallization, you know that your Shadow Ball is going to do a lot more damage than a Moonblast, given it is that Terra Poison, which a lot of Roaring Moons are opting to go towards just to have that super good resistance against its 4 times weakness. So now we're in a good position as well where, both of the players are in more of a checkmate situation where they have the most offensive presence, but also have the most defensive presence compared to what are on either side of the field, which is a big change up from that game 1. So to see how the pace changes from this turn going forward.
Yeah, and we are going to see a Terastallization here on the Roaring Moon from Maurice's side. So, with Terra Poison now, of course, the Flutter Mane now can hit it neutrally with Shadow Ball, but the Drain Punch is going to be resistant, and now the Roaring Moon can go for a knockoff onto this Flutter Mane. It's not going to be quite enough to knock it out, as the Shadow Ball does come out here into the Roaring Moon, but Amoonguss did not go for Rage Powder this turn, and a Wild Charge from the Iron Hands is not enough to knock out the Roaring Moon, but does so much damage, and now this Amoonguss is free to put something to sleep, and it is going to be that Iron Hands.
Iron Hands getting put to sleep is very, very useful in a situation, because you now know that even if it goes to that switch out to bring itself back in later, it can't loop its fake outs. And another good thing as well from that turn going forward is, even though the knockup didn't happen, there's still a benefit to it because you did remove that choice specs. So if it was gone off the field, there's no damage coming from slot whatsoever. If you remove the choice specs, you removed one of Fluttermane's best tools in this matchup, which is smacking out damage. Torkoal coming in helps that a bit. You're not getting that full double stack boost of the choice specs plus the Protest and Resist boost. So we do actually speed boost.
And now the Flutter Mane is going to be faster and just going to be able to knock out that Roaring Moon. So again, a very nice switch there for Yosuke, switching out that Iron Hands, which means now, of course, Maurice knows that the Iron Hands, when it switches back in there, is going to be asleep for at least one turn. But yeah, now the Flutter Mane still on the field there. If the Torkoal hadn't come in and hadn't given that Flutter Mane the speed boost, then it would have just been knocked out by another knockoff from the Roaring Moon.
So I guess I call that a bit too quickly, because it's a 2-for-1. Like, if you get that speed boost, which we did see happen, then you know you're outspeeding it. And given that Yosuke knew that was going to be the speed boost in nature, of course Maurice had to work around is that speed boost, that special attacking boost. You know, he didn't know that was going to be the play that happened. And essence of hope that you get is like, okay, I get the speed boost, I knock out the Shadow Ball. Even if I have my specs gone, it's on low enough HP that it is down and out. You do have that pressure now. There are two really good Pokemon in front of you, which are going to take a hit from your moves regardless, which doesn't allow Flutter Mane to switch out, get a bit of wiggle room to go through as the Cresselia comes on in. So you're going to take hits quite nicely from either of these Pokemon. The Wild Charge is a weapon of an attack when it comes out in these situations. Spore goes through, puts that Torkoal to sleep, which means that it's only attacking this turn, which is very, very good for that Amoonguss, who would have not liked taking a full HP eruption in the sun.
Yeah, especially with that Life Orb boost, because this Torkoal does have Life Orb, actually, which is also an unusual item to see on this Pokemon. And now the Cresselia here, you know, is once again in a very safe position to just go for a Trick Room, since it is carrying that safety goggles, meaning that Maurice is not going to be able to put it to sleep with a Spore. And yeah, there's really not much he can do about it. Even if the Landorus switches here for either one of his Pokemon, the Intimidate is not going to matter to the Torkoal or the Cresselia, and really this Torkoal is just going to burn a turn of or actually already did burn a turn of sleep, so you know it's going to wake up eventually and then just start firing off either eruptions or heat waves.
Yeah, it is going to have to do that once it wakes up. And with Trick Room being an option just to go on the field right now, and neither of these Pokemon are putting too much pressure on that Cresselia, then you know that is going to be a very safe and secure situation to be in. Of course, though, we've got to remember that there are two Pokemon asleep on Yosuke's side, which are the ones that are rotating in and out. But Lunar Blessing actually helps with that a load, especially when you've got that Iron Hands coming in. You can go for that fake out later on and make sure that nothing is targeting this Cresselia with too much power, which then allow it to get that Trick Room off quite safe and securely. And we see how much damage that Iron Hands takes from the Wild Charge, being a very, very good switch there from Yosuke to keep that Torkoal safe, ready for when Trick Room does reactivate.
Yeah, I love a lot of plays from Yosuke that personally I wouldn't expect, but they seem to be working out just fine for him. Now, of course, the Landorus here for Maurice can threaten with a Stomping Tantrum, but as you just mentioned, now that the Iron Hands on Yosuke's side is awake again, is free to go for a Fake Out. But of course, when you Fake Out something like a Landorus, you do need to keep in mind that the next turn it can fire off a boosted Stomping Tantrum. But, you know, Cresselia, once again, could go for a Trick Room to, you know, maybe try and get some damage onto this Landorus before it attacks. But Maurice got to switch in his Amoonguss again, which is going to get faked out by the Iron Hands. Not going to matter too much here, as Stomping Tantrum into the Iron Hands does a lot of damage, but not enough to knock it out, as the Trick Room finally does come out here for Yosuke.
Trick Room finally coming out for Yosuke means that this matchup has swayed a little bit. Of course, you have got the Iron Hands and the Moongas there, who are both very, very slow Pokemon. But as we saw with the speed interaction earlier, Torkoal is going to be even faster in that Trick Room, even in front of this slow Pokemon like a Moongas. And with the help of Lunar Blessing, you get the healing, which is going to be great for your eruption damage. You also recover any sleep that does go down. Of course, Cresselia, once that gets into sleep, can't wake itself up, which could be Maurice's option here to make sure that that thing is gone, done, and dusted and dealt with, and then keeping the other Pokemon safe as to kind of pocket into, especially when you have this Landorus on the field, which is super effective into both of them. Spore coming on out is going into Torkoal that already is asleep, and Lunar Blessing goes through, gives some more HP and a little bit of a wake up to this Torkoal for when it gets into action in this next turn.
Yeah, and the Stomping Tantrum here, as long as this is not a critical hit, it should live it easily. Yeah, actually takes that very, very nicely. But now, I believe the Sun has just disappeared, meaning that any fire moves will do less damage outside of Sun. But as we mentioned before, this Torkoal does play Life Orb, meaning that it will get some damage boost to something like a Heat Wave here, which is gonna hit an Amoonguss super effectively, but might not be enough to knock out the Landorus, and definitely won't be enough to knock out the Iron Hands, which is going to switch in here instead of the Amoonguss for Maurice. So yeah, Trick Room is up now, meaning that this Torkoal will be able to attack first, but it's just going to go for a Protect.
It's going for Protect, keeping itself safe, making sure that no damage goes into it whatsoever, and that Cresselia can do its thing. It also could be a way just to keep that eruption damage, replenished as much as possible. Because as nice as Heat Wave is, it can miss down the line. So you have to run that high risk, high reward of like, okay, I can keep my HP nice and high, go for an eruption, or I could go for a Heat Wave. And with the HP not at its maximum potential, you've got to think that maybe Yosuke's got to start going for those Heat Waves at some point to get some sort of damage down. You have that added benefit of Burn, especially really, really good onto the field right now in these two Pokemon, and Cresselia again, once you Pokemon burn, just taking even less damage itself and can sit there for even longer, going for more Lunar Blessings and just making sure the HP stat is nice and high on the Torkoal, so you can eventually get to that point when you can go for an Eruption, or just keep going for the Heat Waves to guarantee those burns if you want to risk that missed opportunity.
Yeah, I really like how both players are managing their positioning right now. I also the switch in from Maurice, knowing that, okay, this Torkoal is either going to attack and not knock out the Landorus and I can go for a Stomping Tantrum, or it's going to protect. I switch in the Iron Hands and now I have Fake Out pressure back on the field, meaning that, yeah, Yosuke is almost forced to switch in his Flutter Mane here, since, if he had stayed in with Torkoal, it could have just taken Fake Out and Stomping Tantrum and then just gone down. But Maurice also calling that, but no, Heavy Slam going into the Cresselia as opposed to the Flutter Mane. Moonblast going into the Amoonguss slot that was the Landorus. Not going to do any damage here, but is going to give it a special attack drop, which, Maurice's Amoonguss is just playing Pollen Puff as its attacking move, so unlike maybe Yosuke's, Amoonguss is not going to care too much about that. And Trick Room is still up, and now this very low HP Flutter Mane is on the field here for Yosuke, meaning that, when the Torkoal switches back in, the Sun will be back up, but, Trick Room is not going to be on the field forever.
Yeah, Trick Room's not going to be there for the longest time, and it does mean that there is that timer going down for Yosuke, where Cresselia being a bulky Pokemon can probably get it set up again, especially with the help of an Iron Hands coming through. You know that there is that potential of going for Fake Out plus Trick Room later down the line. Torkoal is the one that comes in right now, though, so it's going to get that Sun reactivated, but Spore goes right into it, meaning that it is going to be taking a quick nap for now. So unless we see a Lunar Blessing coming out, that is going to be a very, very long sleep for the Torkoal.
I wouldn't be surprised if we did see a Lunar Blessing. Yes, there it is, meaning that Torkoal is going to wake right back up. This is an insane match here. Both players just, switching around, meaning that, okay, you think that there's not a lot happening, but, you can tell that now the Trick Room is gone, so now this Torkoal here is going to be the slowest Pokemon on the field again, and I think Maurice handled that very well. He made all the calls he had to make, and just almost clawed himself out of a very uncomfortable position, and now the Torkoal kind of forced to go for a Protect here, as Wild Charge into Cresselia is going to do a little bit of damage, but I'm pretty sure this Cresselia is going to be able to hang on to set up another Trick Room, especially with that special attack drop. Cresselia hanging on and setting up that second Trick Room, meaning that Torkoal, once again, the fastest Pokemon on the field. Pretty sure that special attack drop didn't really make a difference, as to, you know, wouldn't have knocked out the Cresselia even without it, if I'd have to guess. But yeah, now Maurice, again in a situation where he might have to stall out this Trick Room once again, and the Torkoal is gonna bring out that Terra Fire, and what are we gonna see here? Maybe an Interruption, maybe a Heat Wave?
It could, given the HP Torkoal's at right now, it could be either, but seeing that helping hand, I think this is just a Hail Mary Eruption, going for every bit of damage possible, and both these Pokemon, you know, a Grass type, as well as a Pokemon that hasn't got the best special defense in the face of all these boosts, is getting dropped to the floor, and that's just the power of that turn there, where Yosuke knew that if you protect the Torkoal, you run that risk for Maurice anyway, where it's, you know, if you target into the Torkoal, you're putting Torkoal to sleep, I'm still getting Trick Room up and get Lunar Blessing the following turn. If you target into my Cresselia and I don't protect, I can get this Eruption off in the sun. And Yosuke went for the safe option where it's just protect Torkoal, you cover any damage going down there, and try and get Trick Room up with these bulky Pokemon. And that special attack drop, where it might not matter too much, you know, the roll could have been the dividends towards the end of it. As you see, Maurice does forfeit and takes that 2-0 loss to a very, very powerful Trick Room team after a very, very long-winded game 2.